If it were not for the threats, the entire Roswell affair could be viewed as nothing more than an embarrassing mistake. But in 1965, Butch Blanchard, now a four-star general, attended a reunion dinner in Roswell, and the incident had not been forgotten.
He had been the commander here in 1947, and I was at a table with the general and several other locals when they were interrogating him about the 1947 incident. And he declined to answer any of the questions, except he did comment that it was the damnedest thing he'd ever seen.
He never would discuss it, but several months later, one night, I badgered him again, as I like to do, and he said, well, and he paused. He said, I'll tell you this, and I'm paraphrasing him because I don't remember exactly how he said it, but in essence he said, what I saw I've never seen before.
For 30 years, the Roswell incident remained a dark secret. Town and military maintained an uneasy silence. The story didn't see the light of day until 1978, when Jesse Marcel, the 509's intelligence officer, went public with an appearance on American television.
I was amazed as to what I saw. The amount of debris that was scattered over such an area. It took me a while to realize that there's something strange about it. But the more I saw the fragments, the more I realized that it wasn't anything that I was acquainted with. I proved by trying to burn it, it wouldn't burn. I tried to break it, it would not break. If it was something of ours, I'm sure there would be no reason to keep it under cover that long. If it's an alien spacecraft, there's another reason why it would not never been owned by anybody here until they found out more about it. I sensed that there was a cover-up someplace about this whole matter.
In 1947, General Ramey's chief of staff was Colonel Thomas DuBose. Shortly before he died, he was interviewed on home video. As a retired brigadier general, he is the highest-ranking officer ever to comment on the Roswell incident.
It was a cover story. The balloon part of it is the story that's to be given to the press, and that is it, and anything else, forget it. And McMullen, if you ever knew him, if you told him that he wanted to run something, he goddamn sure ran it. He knew every facet of the operation. He's a busybody. He wanted to know what the hell was going on, who was pissing on the sidewalk, and all that sort of thing.
General McMullen, deputy head of Strategic Air Command at the Pentagon, was in charge of the entire operation, according to General DuBose.
McMullen told me, you are not to discuss this, and this is a point of which this is more than top secret, as he said. It's beyond that. It's within my priority as deputy to George Kenney, and he in turn responsible to the president. This is the highest priority you can exist, and you will say nothing, and that's the end of it. And Jesus, that's from the commander-in-chief, and you forgot about it.
The revelations of DuBose suggest that the American Air Force did indeed have something important to hide.
There's no question about that. General DuBose said that specifically to us, that the balloon explanation that the Air Force offered was a cover story to get the reporters off General Ramey's back. So we have a wide body of testimony that was a cover-up. We have military witnesses saying they were sworn to secrecy. We have radio employees telling us that they were told if they broadcast their interview with Mac Brazel, they better look for a new job because they'd be out of the radio business the next day. We can show that beyond a shadow of a doubt. There's no question there was a cover-up. The question is, what were they hiding?
What could the Air Force have been hiding for the last 40 years? One man who may hold the key to the mystery is Frank Kaufman. Kaufman claims that in 1947 he was a master sergeant in personnel at Roswell Army Airfield. But what was not known at the time, he says, is that he was also a covert member of a highly secret counterintelligence unit codenamed the Nine. Tonight, Kaufman reveals for the first time what he claims is the true story of the Roswell incident.
I was assigned to Roswell in 1942. My duties at that time was somewhat classified. The events that led up to the 1947 incident was rather peculiar because there was a lot of erratic movement on the radar screen, and this called our attention that maybe we better monitor those screens. They sent some of us to Alamogordo, to White Sands, to view the blips on the screens. The blips were just dancing from one end of the screen to the other, and then all of a sudden there was kind of a flash, and it just disappeared. Well, that indicated that possibly maybe a plane or a missile or something just went down.
Kaufman says he and his team immediately drove east from Alamogordo back to Roswell, then on towards a location about 35 miles south of the Foster Ranch.
And now this was late at night. We started to clip some of the wire fence and drove into the area. The terrain was very rough at the time. There was no roads leading into it. We saw this glow of light, just this kind of a halo of a light, just kind of beaming out. We got to, I guess, maybe 200 yards, maybe 300 yards from where it was. And we learned right then and there it wasn't a plane, it wasn't a missile, it was kind of a strange-looking craft that was embedded in the arroyo, see. The size of the craft, I would say possibly maybe around 20, 25 feet in length, and it was open and kind of halfway, and one body was thrown up against the wall of the arroyo. The other one was half in and half out of the craft. And when we got in close, we noticed that there were probably 3 others inside the craft. Then we radioed in back to the base to have a truck, a flatbed, and a crane and everything else just come out to the site, and we prepared everything to clear everything off.
Frank Kaufman provided us with what he claims is a copy of his official report on the Roswell incident, a top-secret document containing observations and sketches of what he saw at the time.
We saw panels of controls. We couldn't make them out. They were writings. We didn't know what it. We couldn't decipher it or anything of that nature. And the underbelly of the craft had a series of cells, quartz type cells, sort of glass-looking cells, Arctic in shape.
This is the actual site where Kaufman says he saw the strange craft for the first time. This is an artist's impression of the aliens, based on Kaufman's own descriptions.
We noticed one thing, that deterioration was beginning to set in on one of the bodies of the hands. We noticed the hands, the skin trying to shrivel up, and that's the reason why we put them in the bags real in a hurry and got them out to the base hospital. They called the mortuary here to find out if there was anything that they could preserve the bodies with.
The base also inquired about the availability of child-sized coffins, and later there was another call to the town undertaker.
I received a call later from the same mortuary officer stating that what embalming fluids consisted of what would it do to the blood contents, what would it do to tissue, stomach contents, and how would it alter it. And I informed him what the answers that he wanted.
Glenn Dennis had the ambulance contract to ferry any injured servicemen to the base. That same day, he took an airman to the hospital there and was amazed to find himself being roughly escorted off the base by military police, who told him he had no right to be there.
As they were taking me out, there was a door that was open over to the left, and there was a nurse coming out that had a towel over a portion of her face, and she looked up and she recognized me, and she said, "Glenn, get out of here. Get out of here as fast as you can. You're going to get in a lot of trouble." Then the next morning, she called me about 10 o'clock or so and said that she would like to see me, that we had to talk. And so I met her out at the officers' club that morning. And she was already there when I arrived at the officers' club. She was very upset, still crying, very hysterical. Then she told me what happened about going into this room. These doctors were there, and there was some 2 hospital gurneys there with the crash bags. One crash bag was 2 very small mutilated bodies. The other one, there was a very small body in a crash bag, but hadn't been mutilated as much as the others. And she told me the reason what they wouldn't let her out, because they wanted her to write down what they were examining. And that's what she was doing. And they all became very ill. They said that the smell, and it was a very toxic smell, and they just couldn't breathe and get their breath, and they had to get out.
This is Hangar 84, and this is where the craft and the bodies were actually brought into this hangar. But there was a lot of activity in this area here. And inside the hangar, right above on top, there was this large spotlight which was shining down on the craft, and also the bodies were laid out. There were 5 of them. And there was a cordon of military police around the area to keep people getting too close.